Everyone knows, of course, that Paramahansa Yogananda spoke quite a bit about World Brotherhood colonies and quite a bit to Yogacharya Oliver, our founder here. And when he talked about plans for the retreat that he wanted him to start, a big part of it was always the community. So Yogacharya, who started the retreat around 1970, would always talk to all of us about the community and different things.
He talked about the whole development of the retreat and the community being part of that. I believe he often said there would be 10,000 people here coming and going every day, and the property was big enough that you wouldn't notice it.
Back in those days, he started it through what we would call at that time resident members. That meant that a resident could rent a dome and live there for a while, and we call that the beginning of our community. And way back in the 80s, the Gold Notice Board was nonstop at their meetings planning how to put together the community, and there's various ways that they were thinking that it could possibly work. And one of them was to build domes and that people rent them or possibly buy them, whatever. They found that it wasn't as easy to do as you might think.
Years and decades go by, and one wondered, was it ever going to happen? And he started it right near the end of his life. He made a push to bring it into being, and it didn't happen. And it wasn't until his successor, Bob Raymer, who was also a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, came, and the energy and the work to bring the community into being happened.
Two people that worked on it quite a bit was Dr. Gary Sachs, who was on the board at that time, and Paul Gordon, who was an architect from Toronto. They went to zoning, and they said that they wanted, to have some houses where people could live and so on. And they were told, well, we don't want you just, put up houses. We want to know what you want to do for all times on this property. And really, the answer zoning gave them ended up being a prototype for the entire future of our, not just community, but ranch in terms of the physical layout of it.
It took 2 years to get health department approval.
It took quite a while to get off the ground, to create a world center of spiritual energy and creative thinking, but now it's really kind of sailing along.
The basic idea is that 600 of the acres would remain forested, natural forest, 200 of it would be developed.
We have a site where we can actually have a future town.
If there was any part of the community I thought we would never get is being allowed to do it in the middle of the state forest. This is a well-loved, protected state forest, and they don't like development here, and we're surrounded by state forest. So many signs of divine guidance throughout it, things that really made no sense unless you understood that there's a higher layer that really wanted this project. One of the interesting things is the year the first house was going to be built, they paved the road coming out to the retreat. Now, where did that come from? If you ask some of the local people, there were some that say, well, why did you pave that road? Well, we never asked for it. But these sorts of things, I could probably give you a dozen of them, examples. In any case, so we started selling the leases.
The community, which is in 3 phases, 3 residential areas, we call them phases.
The very first house was the house next door, Marianne and George Johnston. We now have 31 lots leased. We have 8 houses up and 2 coming up this year, and there's only about 71, 72 all-time lots.
This is an amazing area. We're surrounded by over 100,000 acres of state forest. 3 rivers near us, one that goes right through the retreat. We're 40 miles from Lake Huron. We're also 50 miles from where the Mackinac Bridge, where the 2 Great Lakes meet. It's a beautiful area, a lot to do. Some of the activities that people enjoy are snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, of course hiking, canoeing, kayaking.
The opportunities for being in nature and being in the woods here are fantastic.
Usually all you can hear is a few birds and sometimes a little bit of wind. being out in nature and in the quiet, it's so easy to think about God and the gurus and just be incredibly grateful.
There were some elk out by the garden. Ian pointed out to me one day. He was driving by and he pointed and saw this huge bull elk and the female next to it.
I got up early and it was so quiet, and I looked across the lake from the lodge on the hill, and I saw a deer and a young fawn drinking out of the river. And that's one of my earliest memories here at Song of the Morning.
You can't walk away from this property without having good feelings. So it would be a great place to come and just develop that inner life that you're looking for.
I never have to be alone. I can always go down and volunteer. They always need help.
Our path is one of service to one another. And sometimes it's easy to lose that in the secular ways that we have, the things that we're doing in life, working, raising families, having relationships with others.
But what's particularly nice is we have that option of having our own peace and quiet, but then we can share with others.
On the day of our final move into the house, we were given a perfect Christmas tree. And on that Christmas day, when we were having our progressive Christmas dinner, everyone came here and we opened a box of ornaments and everyone decorated our tree with us and stood in a circle around the center of our home, which is a Brahmastan. It's a sacred center place in the design of our home, and chanted the Gayatri mantra and other great mantras to bless our home.
I find the people who live here inspiring. It's impressive, especially these young people.
And for me, I loved the staff.
You'll be uplifted by your service here and by your association with other spiritual people. And at the same time, you get to help those that come behind you. It's a never-ending process.
We are out in the middle of the woods. It snows a lot.
I do not find the winters to be a problem.
In the winter, I live in northern Arizona, where I'm able to work as a musician. But I do love coming back for the 4 or 5 weeks in January. Spend it here. It's very beautiful. It's crisp and cold and invigorating.
Maybe that's why the yogis chose the Himalayas to live in.
And how about the winters?
They're terrible. And that just says a lot, because I don't think I would put up with it unless I was here. Because yes, they are a challenge, and they're definitely a challenge for someone alone. But I always have people that are willing to step up and help me out. That's what the community is, to be there for each other.
And people may wonder, well, don't you want to go anywhere where it's warm in the winter? Oh, maybe, but it's just such a wonderful feeling here. I don't mind living here year-round.
The community has, it doesn't have a lot of rules. One of the most important ones is that the people who move here for their spiritual benefit.
Not requiring a particular religious orientation per se. The main thing was to support growth in God and realizing God.
If you were to want to lease and build here in the ranch, all that we require is that you be compatible with Yogananda's teachings.
We're a spiritual community. The retreat is a beautiful place to live. There's a lot of people who love nature. But this is a place where people can come and be exposed to the highest teachings, which is the teachings of Kriya Yoga that we have through our master. You're surrounded with the people that are doing the same things. You have availability of services. You have new people who are just needing to know about it, and gives you an opportunity to share your enthusiasm with it. The whole environment is put together to help you to move forward and to grow in that spiritual intent. We have a membership requirement to join the community, and to me that's the most vital piece of it, that when you come here, that's your reason. And if that's the case, there's no stopping a place like this.
What can one say about living in this community? It's a concept that Paramahansa Yogananda valued greatly toward the end of his life, this idea of world brotherhood, colony. in this idea that if people of like minds would come together and live in mutual support, we could demonstrate to the world that this kind of life, this kind of environment, this kind of growth in God is possible. And at a time like this, maybe all times, these kinds of places of light and love and mutual support are so tremendously valuable. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.